All right, are you ready to dive into a question that's been debated for centuries? Do we actually have free will? We're exploring this huge topic with the help of a YouTube video from History of the Universe. What I love about their approach is they use a courtroom drama to unpack the arguments for and against free will. And instead of getting bogged down in all that philosophical jargon, they bring in some really cool science, like chaos theory and quantum mechanics.
It's a brilliant way to make these complex ideas more accessible. I mean, who doesn't love a good courtroom drama, right?
Exactly. So picture this. The defense attorney's trying to prove that his client's actions were predetermined, not a result of free will at all. He goes all the way back to the Big Bang, arguing that every single event since then has been a direct consequence of the laws of physics.
It's essentially the argument for causal determinism, this idea that everything, including our choices, is like a domino effect set in motion by the Big Bang.
And to really drive this point home, the video brings in Laplace's demon. Have you ever heard of this thought experiment?
Oh, absolutely. It's a class. Imagine a being that knows the exact position and velocity of every single atom in the universe and also understands all the laws of physics.
Right. So the question is, if such a being existed, could it predict the future with 100% accuracy? Because if everything really is predetermined, then theoretically this demon could know exactly what you're going to have for breakfast tomorrow or what you'll be doing 10 years from now. It kind of makes you think, doesn't it?
It definitely challenges our intuitive sense of free will, that's for sure. And the defense attorney in the video uses a pretty compelling argument to back this up. The incredible success of Newtonian physics.
Oh, right. He points out that we can predict things like solar eclipses with pinpoint accuracy using Newton's laws. So if the universe operates like clockwork on a large scale, maybe our brains do too, right?
That's the implication. And it's a powerful one. But as the video cleverly shows, there are cracks in this seemingly perfect clockwork universe, starting with the human brain itself.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. So the video acknowledges that the human brain is incredibly complex. I mean, we're talking billions of neurons, trillions of connections. It's mind-boggling. And even with all our advances in neuroscience, we still don't fully understand how consciousness arises from this tangled web of activity.
Exactly. And if we can't even fully grasp the workings of our own brains, how can we confidently say that all our thoughts and actions are predetermined? Seems like there's room for some wiggle room, right?
I'm with you on that. And it's right around this point that the video throws another wrench into the determinism argument, chaos theory. They illustrate this with a simple but super relatable example, a dripping tap keeping you awake at night.
Ah, yes, the dripping tap. It's a brilliant analogy for understanding chaos. You see, even something as seemingly simple as a dripping tap can be a chaotic system. It's practically impossible to predict when the next drop will fall with perfect accuracy because tiny, almost imperceptible variations in the initial conditions can lead to drastically different outcomes.
So even if the universe operates according to fixed laws, there's still this element of unpredictability baked in, especially when you're dealing with complex systems.
Precise. And the video delves into the history of chaos theory, highlighting Edward Lorenz and his accidental discovery of the butterfly effect. He was trying to model weather patterns on a computer, but he noticed that even the tiniest rounding error in the initial conditions could lead to completely different forecasts.
Wait, so you're telling me that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil could potentially cause a tornado in Texas?
That's the idea. Of course, it's a simplification, but it illustrates the core concept of chaos. Tiny changes can have massive, unpredictable consequences over time. And this isn't just limited to weather patterns. We see chaotic behavior in all sorts, from the stock market to the movements of planets.
Okay, so now we've got this cosmic tug-of-war going on between determinism and chaos. On one hand, we have the laws of physics governing everything, and on the other, we have these unpredictable systems that seem to defy easy prediction. It's enough to make your head spin, but hold on tight, because the video is about to throw yet another mind-blowing concept into the mix. All right, let's jump back into our exploration of free will. We've already covered determinism, touched on the incredible complexity of the human brain, and explored how chaotic systems can really throw a wrench into predictions, even in a universe that's governed by laws. Where do we go from here?
Well, just when you think you've got a handle on things, the video introduces another layer of complex quantum mechanics. And this is where the whole debate about free will takes a fascinating turn.
I've always found quantum mechanics to be one of those topics that's both incredibly intriguing and kind of headache-inducing. What's the video's take on how it relates to free will?
It starts by introducing one of the most famous thought experiments in physics, Schrödinger's cat. You've probably heard of it. A cat is placed in a box with a device that has a 50-50 chance of releasing a deadly poison.
Oh, yeah. And until someone opens the box to observe what's going on, the cat exists in a state of being both alive and dead at the same time, right?
Exactly. Schrodinger's cat perfectly illustrates the central mystery of quantum mechanics. At the subatomic level, things exist in a state of probability and uncertainty. It's not just that we don't know what's going to happen until we observe it, it's that the outcome isn't actually determined until the moment of observation.
So instead of a universe that operates like a predictable clock, quantum mechanics suggests that there's this element of randomness or chance baked into reality itself?
That's one way to interpret it. And to back this up, the video brings in another mind-blowing experiment, the Stern-Gerlach experiment. In a nutshell, scientists were firing electrons through a magnetic field, expecting them to behave in a predictable way. But what they observed was that the electrons' behavior was totally random. It was as if they were choosing their paths spontaneously.
So even at the tiniest levels of reality, there's this element of unpredictability that seems to go against the idea of a deterministic universe.
It certainly challenges the notion that everything is predetermined. And the video points out that this inherent randomness at the subatomic level is at the heart of the Copenhagen interpretation, which is one of the most widely accepted interpretations of quantum mechanics.
Hold on, different interpretation. So does that mean scientists and physicists aren't all on the same page when it comes to what quantum mechanics actually tells us about reality?
That's right. There are a number of different interpretations, each attempting to make sense of the weirdness of quantum mechanics. Some interpretations, like the many worlds interpretation, actually try to preserve the idea of determinism by suggesting that every possible outcome of a quantum event actually occurs, just in different branching universes.
Oh, parallel universes. Now that's a conversation for another deep dive. But focusing back on the question of free will, does quantum mechanics give us back our free will then? If things aren't predetermined at the subatomic level, does that mean we have genuine freedom?
It's tempting to jump to that conclusion, but it's not quite that simple. The relationship between quantum mechanics and free will is still very much a subject. Some physicists argue that even if there is randomness at the quantum level, it doesn't necessarily translate to free will in the sense that we typically understand it. Our brains, after all, operate at a much larger scale than individual atoms and subparticles.
So while quantum mechanics might introduce a bit more wiggle room into the equation, it doesn't automatically mean we have complete control over our choices.
Exactly. But the video doesn't end the discussion there. It acknowledges that there are still many mysteries surrounding the universe, and the biggest one of all might be the very thing that makes us human, consciousness.
That makes sense. I mean, we've talked about how complex the human brain is, but we haven't really delved into how that complexity relates to the experience of consciousness. And isn't consciousness really at the core of the free will debate? After all, it's through our conscious awareness that we experience the feeling of making choices.
You've hit the nail on the head. The video explores this fascinating phenomenon called blind sight, where people with damage to their visual cortex can still react to visual stimuli, even though they're not consciously aware of seeing anything.
Wait, so you're saying these people can technically see, but they don't know they're seeing? That's bizarre.
It is, and it highlights just how much is going on beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. The video goes on to emphasize that we still have a very limited understanding of how consciousness arises from the intricate workings of the brain. We've got all these theories, integrated information theory, global workspace theory, and so on, but we're still a long way from cracking this mystery.
So if we don't even fully understand consciousness, how can we claim to know whether or not we have free will? It seems like we're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle.
That's a point the video really drives home, and it's here that it starts to shift the conversation away from a simple either, determinism versus free will. It suggests that maybe we need to rethink the whole framework, to consider the possibility that the answer isn't as black and white as we tend to assume.
I love that the video is pushing us to think beyond the traditional categories and explore the nuances of this debate. So where does it go from there? How do we even begin to reconcile the idea of free will with the potential limitations of a deterministic universe, the randomness of quantum mechanics, and the enigma of consciousness? That ending to part 2 was quite the cliffhanger. We've gone from the Big Bang to the human brain, and now we're left grappling with this huge question: can free will exist even if the universe might be deterministic?
It's a question that's plagued philosophers and scientists for centuries, and honestly, there's no easy answer. But I think that's what makes this whole exploration so captivating, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I have to admit, when we start talking about the possibility that all of our choices might be predetermined, it's easy to slip into a kind of, existential dread. If everything's already set in motion, what's the point of anything? Does it even matter what choices we make?
It's a natural reaction, for sure. Many philosophers and everyday people have wrestled with that very feeling, like we're just cogs in a machine. But the video does something really interesting here. It kind of nudges us to consider that even within a deterministic framework, life can still have profound meaning.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How can we find meaning if we don't have, control over the grand scheme of things?
Well, think about it this way. If we accept that everything is interconnected, that each event is a consequence of countless prior events, it can actually lead to a deeper sense of compassion and understanding.
You're saying that instead of judging others for their choices, we should consider the complex chain of events that led them to that point.
Exactly. Instead of asking, why would they do that? We might ask what factors in their life, their environment, their experiences contributed to this decision. It's a subtle shift in perspective, but it can be incredibly powerful.
I could see how that would apply to understanding other people, but could that same logic apply to ourselves?
Absolutely. If we make a mistake, instead of beating ourselves up about it, we can try to understand what led us there. We can learn from our choices, recognize the factors that influenced us, and make different choices in the future. It's not about denying responsibility, but about recognizing that our choices are part of this larger tapestry.
So it's less about feeling trapped by determinism and more about embracing the interconnectedness of everything. It almost sounds liberating in a way.
Many people find it can free us from the pressure of trying to control everything. Instead of constantly second guessing ourselves, we can focus on what we can control: our reactions, our attitudes, our relations.
And that brings us to the final point the video makes. Even if our choices are predetermined, it doesn't diminish the beauty and wonder of life itself. We're still capable of experiencing joy, love, connection, all those things that make life worth living.
Right. And the very fact that we can reflect on these questions, that we can even engage in these philosophical debates, is itself pretty remarkable. I mean, we're products of billions of years of cosmic evolution, and here we are pondering the meaning of it all.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? This deep dive has taken us on quite the journey, from the laws of physics to the mysteries of consciousness. We've explored mind-blowing concepts and wrestled with some of life's biggest questions.
And while we may not have arrived at a definitive answer to the question of free will, I think we've gained a much deeper appreciation for the complexity of this.
I agree. So as we wrap up, what's the one big takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with?
I think the most important thing is to just, keep asking questions. The video doesn't give us a neat and tidy answer, and that's okay. It invites us to continue exploring this, to keep the conversation going.
And that's the beauty of a deep dive, isn't it? It's all about sparking curiosity, expanding our understanding, and just, embracing the unknown. So to our listener out there, we'll leave you with this. If free will is indeed an illusion, does that change how you view your choices and action? Does it diminish the meaning or significance of your life? We encourage you to keep pondering these questions and see where your own deep dive leads you.
Happy exploring.